Thank you very much for all opening statements and for coming in. Could I just ask, I suppose, Jeffrey and Karen, could I just ask you about, I know the EU Digital Services Act, that's kind of your governing body, and we've moved quick, I think we're moving quicker, we'll say. I know my colleague Alan Kelly has brought in an amendment to Coco's law to include AI generated images in that. So we're obviously responding as quick as we can, but how can we ensure that big digital companies, I suppose, that the EU, that from an EU level, that we'll say things that we all say, I suppose, looking from a children's rights approach as well, that it's not just based on, it's not just about self-regulation, that big digital companies have to be responsible, and we have to have some mechanism. Do we need to increase our own legislation around things like banning autoplay, banning loot boxes, looking at addictive designs, and what you spoke about, the algorithms like that, by default, that they're automatically turned off or that they're banned? How can do we need extra legislation in Ireland for that, to get Europe to move?
Thanks for the question. So it's really important, I think, to address this at a European level, because the platforms that children use are not all based in Ireland. So we need to see we talked today about Snapchat, Roblox based in the Netherlands. We have TikTok based in Ireland. So some of the platforms that are important to children are based here, some in Europe. So it's really useful to have the whole Europe working together. In terms of your question, we have moved definitely away from an era of self-regulation to an era of statutory regulation. So the Digital Services Act does place binding obligations on platforms to keep children safe, and then that has been supplemented with much more specific guidelines on what that actually means in practice. So the question about addictive design, if I highlight some of my favourite parts of the guidelines, if you offer service to children, first of all, you must have some form of age assurance or age verification, so you know which of your customers, which of your users are children and which are adults. You must not expose children to addictive design features like infinite scrolling, like pop-up notifications, like promotion of streaks, or at least those have to be turned off by default. You must not expose children to inappropriate content like pornography or extreme violence.
These are guidelines, but it's how that's going to become...
So platforms that do not follow those guidelines will be investigated for breaches of the Digital Services Act, either by the European Commission or by ourselves or one of the counterparts.
And is that happening at the moment?
So that is absolutely happening. I'm aware that there may be investigations on this opened quite soon in other parts of Europe. So the guidelines came in last July. The kind of supervision, the assessment of whether people are complying with those guidelines is underway at the moment. If they don't comply with the guidelines, there will be investigations. As well as the guidelines, there's also a coordinated action on pornography. So the European Commission is taking some action against some of the largest pornography platforms. But I think one of the observations is that if we get the large platforms to introduce proper age assurance, then people will just go and use smaller platforms.
And I suppose, thank you, Jeremy. And I suppose that brings me on to the children's rights approach. And if you could talk more about that, Ciara and Timmy, and maybe yourself, Fiona, I suppose we don't. I know the banning of under 16s has come in Australia, and we don't know how that's going. There's very little evidence to say it's working or not, And I suppose it's trying to see that the last thing we want in Ireland, I think, is that there's so many different people working in different ways, that there's we'll say national awareness campaigns for children, for parents, for teachers, for schools, for youth projects, that we need I suppose a clear approach. And I'm just wondering about that. How can we ensure that we're adopting a children's rights approach, but also that we're including parents' voices, youth voices, like youth services, and it's trying to see how we can have a national campaign. And there's not duplication of services. We say that, it's very, I know the guards, you said yourselves that you go into schools. I'm a youth worker, so I've been involved in projects myself in schools. I know web-wise, but there's a huge opportunity for youth services, for sports clubs, to get involved in this, but it's having very clear messaging so that young people are aware of the legal implications, big tech companies are aware, you know, parents aren't aware, and so you'd hope that is that the role of Commissioner Mann, or is it the role of, I don't know, the children ombudsman? So maybe Timmy and Ciara, maybe you could talk a little bit about a children's rights approach to online safety, I suppose that would be.
So I suppose children under the UNCRC, children have many rights. They have the rights to communication, to play, to education, to health, and a lot of these are engaged online. Now there's obviously also the right to protection from harm, but for us, I suppose the one that we notice as being most absent from the debates on kind of maybe banning children from social media is their right to have their voices heard. That is something that really isn't brought up in any of the discussions. We've engaged with our youth advisory panel in the office, and they've outlined the risks, they've outlined, I suppose, the problems that they face. They have different perspectives on it, but they've also outlined the benefits to it. So we think that a ban is a bit of a blunt instrument. It's kind of nearly putting the responsibility on the children, or taking away what's benefiting them, and it's taking maybe the responsibility then away from the social media companies, who are the companies who should be designing their products in such a way that means that they're safe for children, rather than just saying children can't use these products. I suppose social media then also is only one of the online environments. So, I mean, like that, there's online gaming platforms, things like that, where children can also be contacted and exposed to risk. So it doesn't mean that the risk is gone. It just means maybe that one category of the risk is gone. You also have children who probably might still find ways to go online, and they're then going.
There's huge benefits to online.
And like they're going online then to assist to, I suppose, a service that hasn't been designed to be safe for them because they're not supposed to be there. And like that, there's children who have there's huge benefits for children to being online. So it's, in our view, it's more put the responsibility on the companies rather than the children.
Sorry, Fiona, I never got back.
There'll be a second.
Sorry that I had to go out as well. I'm running back, so I'm sure you might have said this already. And it's very similar on the lines of Deputy Cummins as well, is that even from our briefing documents, there's so much talk about having a national campaign, and there's obviously wonderful work being done by different organisations. There's youth advisory committees, I suppose, in all different organisations, but I suppose it's seeing where the role of youth services like NYCI, and it's seeing how those big roles for OIG, like, because I know that they're on it when it comes to digital, they really are, like, and it's trying to see that, like I said kind of earlier on about, if there's too many campaigns and there's too many different outlets, the message gets lost, and it's to seeing, is it Commissioner Mann, is that your responsibility? Who's going to roll out the national campaign? Is it going to be Commissioner Mann? Is it going to be within the new units, the children and family units within the Department of Taoiseach? Who's going to fund it? Who's going to deliver it? And whose responsibility, I suppose, is to get this across all platforms, both, social media, traditional media, getting into, like, I suppose, youth organisations, getting into sports clubs, if it's a campaign, I suppose, whose responsibility is it? Because if everyone's working in silos, the message gets lost.
To do likewise. I suppose we've said in our opening statement, and I know others have said similar, that we see this as a whole of society response. So I think responsibility for national awareness campaigns don't necessarily rest with one agency, can be done as a coalition, if you like. And I just maybe to build on some of the points that Jane was making, there is a risk of a proliferation of campaigns, and messages can get confused and messages can get lost. So I think one of the things, and we've discussed this internally, is understanding what messages people most need and who do they need to hear it from, because it's also about trust, trusted voices, trusted organisations, and also just to build on what colleagues have been saying about the importance of any national awareness campaigns being complemented by work at grassroots level in schools, in communities where people are living their lives, because these messages about what to do, where to seek support, how to get help, they need to be reinforced time and time again. We can't assume that somebody will hear it the first time and it'll land. It may not resonate the first time, it may at a different context that, yeah. So I think it's about a very coordinated but a sustained approach to raising awareness. And as Jane was saying, that purpose of raising awareness is to empower people. It's not to place responsibility for online safety on children and young people or on parents. Those obligations rest with platforms and providers, but it is very much about empowering so people feel equipped to navigate this environment in a way that's safe.
But whose overarching as us, I suppose, as legislators, whose responsibility is within the Oireachtas to say, to make sure that approach is coordinated? Like, how is there a task force set up about it where all the different organisations are part of it? How is it going to make sure that we are getting very clear messaging? And I don't know if that's you or not. I don't know what department it does.
I don't have an immediate answer to the question, because I think it's a whole of government piece as well.
Okay.
And this issue is cross-cutting across different government departments. But I think what we'd suggested, it does need to be coordinated and phased and ongoing at grassroots level as well as big campaigns.
And would the Children and Family Unit, would that be a place for it within the Department of Taoiseach? I'm just putting that out there. I don't know.
I don't know either is the honest answer.
I would jump in very briefly. It certainly needs a home, it needs a coordination, it needs leadership, and then the cascading then can happen. Because, even as much and as hard as we try, there is still a lot of work happening in silos. And, parents, they're not a homogenous group, and they need specific, and that's why we use the word targeted. In that, a lot of what is out there is universal messaging, and that's not landing. And research time and time again shows that once-off campaigns or once-off talks do not work. They don't work. So that's why you do need that sustained approach. But there are many experts in the room here, and you've heard from some of them already in committee. And it is about getting them together and then designing that campaign and rolling it out.
And it's trying to find a responsibility within government to say who's going to be in charge of that.
Well, it is, but often I suppose when things are across government, it does land at the Office of Taoiseach, doesn't it?
Yeah. Or is it the Department of Ed? Is it in the Taoiseach, the unit that's there already? Anyway, thank you. Thanks.
I just one more response. That's okay. Yeah. Sorry, just one thing. Like, what's coming to mind for me is a campaign can have many variables to it. It's not just education either. One thing in the smartphone ban, in the discussions we had with young people about the smartphone ban, and one thing that did constantly come up is the resources within schools. There's a huge variance there in terms of the resources, infrastructure, digital infrastructure. So that would seem to be something that we can close as well going forward, to make sure that no matter where you're in school, every child has access to the same resources within school as well. And that is having a big impact on education of the children and, in essence, education of the parents then as well.
I suppose even the Department of Education, even the young people, youth services are part of the Department of Education now, that they're not with children. So it's, it's a difficult, we just need to find a proper place. Concern, and there's everyone's doing their very best to keep on top of it, which is really hard to do, because it keeps changing. But I wonder, is there the voice of making sure that the voice of the child or the young people is being heard? I know there's all youth advisory committees, but there definitely is a cohort of young people that don't feel comfortable reporting, and I'm wondering, is there any ways to address that? Maybe they're afraid their phones are going to be taken off them. Maybe they're afraid that they know someone that has done this and they don't want to get them in trouble. There's loads of different reasons. Maybe they're afraid that if it is something like online bullying, or that it's going to get worse. So I'm just wondering how that is addressed, or I don't know how prevalent would you see that, particularly yourselves, but for parents that are probably the ones that go to you. And would that have come up as an issue for children particularly that are kind of reluctant?
Yeah, thanks, Deputy. No, you're 100% right. And actually, with this particular issue in mind, we collaborated with another 14 countries across the EU, and we're partnered to a Help for You, which is a digital platform which provides information. And again, we talked about hearing the voice of children. There were 200 children involved in the research to develop this platform. And basically, it provides very simple guidance and signposting for children that are either victims of online sexual grooming, sexual coercion, or sharing of sexual images. So if they find themselves in their bedroom in that position, that their images are shared online, they can go into this platform, and we're rolling it out as part of the schools programme, and we're going to do some more information campaigns on it. But it actually leads them to the areas that can give them the information that they need, and that might be talk to your parent, talk to a trusted adult, talk to your teacher, or you can contact hotline to get the image taken down. They can just press a button and it will bring them to the resource.
Straight away,
And that happens, yeah, absolutely. It will signpost them to the information. So we have partnered with Hotline and Childline in relation to that.
So there's another example that might get lost. You know, that mightn't be, because there's so many different campaigns in working in. I had no idea that existed at all. And how quick is it, the response? How quick would it?
So it isn't, so it's information that the child is provided with. So they're not interacting with anyone, but it is signposting them to what to do in a crisis situation.
And then the child has to still come in.
And then the child, they might think of who they can talk to. If it's not a parent, well, maybe they have an aunt, maybe they have a teacher, maybe there's another trusted adult in their life that they can actually talk to about this. Or if there is an image up there, they can go on to Hotline, and it will bring you to Hotline, and they can fill out the form, and the content is taken down. But it gives them the information that they need, I suppose, to deal with the situation that they might find themselves in.
Great, thank you.